The North remembers. Hey guys, what's up? And today I'm gonna do a review on one of the most popular and viral TV shows that's actually brilliantly great, Game of Thrones. This is a review of its 4th season, or A Storm of Swords Part 2, according to the books. But beware of minor spoilers from the previous 3 seasons. To recap, I'm gonna explain briefly. The Starks are a northern family, traveled to King's Landing to help the king, but bad things happened and the Lannisters despised the Starks. So now 3 very important Starks are dead after a tragic execution and a brutal wedding, and the remaining Starks are all over the world. Meanwhile, Daenerys Targaryen was building up her empire in Essos, preparing to fight everyone in Westeros and rule the world. She had 3 dragons, an army, and a lot of good friends. Now the Boltons are helping the Lannisters, and the Tyrells were also on the Lannisters' side, except it's not really true, and there's still tension between the kings, Joffrey Lannister, Stannis Baratheon, and Balon Greyjoy, although Balon didn't do much. So the first episode is titled Two Swords. Is it because the Hound and Arya also got 2 swords? Or is it because of 2 Valyrian steel swords? I don't know. Anyway, this episode is the best season premiere for the show so far. It's such an exciting and uplifting episode, creating more tension and drama. Now it's like a whole new chapter for the show. The Starks versus Lannister war isn't there anymore. So instead of continuing focusing on politics and other magical aspects of the show straightforwardly introduced Oberyn Martell, directly creating tension between the Lannisters and them. Then we also have Jon Snow reuniting with Samwell Tarly and the Night's Watch. We also have Jaime reuniting with Cersei and shaved clean. It gives a new dynamic and pace to the show, making us anticipate more from it. Then I was a bit surprised when I see Daario Naharis change to actor. It was Ed Skrein last season, and now we have a more charismatic, funny gentleman who had nice mustache and beard. It's totally different Daario. Also, the last scene is fabulous, when the Hound and Arya stumbled upon Arya's old enemy, Polliver. It's a hell of an entertaining scene, and I'm sorry but I have to say this. Arya fucking nailed it. Arya was being really violent and brutal, started slaughtering people without any signs of regret and remorse, as if she's beginning to develop this post-traumatic psychopathy after what happened to her family. But I still take it as a brave, violent girl meets homicidal anger and vengeance. But damn, then I started to pick up some clues about Arya. How Syriel told her about the god of death, how Melisandre said she saw death in Arya's eyes. I'm intrigued and impressed. I'm also impressed by Maisie Williams' performance. And the next is something I've been waiting for a long time. It's episode 2, The Lion and the Rose, which means the purple wedding is happening. Oh shit. Overall, this episode is really dark and intense. It's full of tragic scenes, no matter it's happy or sad. Like how Ramsay treated people and made Theon his servant, or like when Melisandre burned the people who betrayed her and said it's the right thing to do, or when Tyrion tried to make Shae leave for good, and watching these scenes set up the sad and ominous atmosphere for what's about to come. We also see Sigurdos in this episode. That's a surprise for me because no way did an Icelandic band end up in one of the greatest HBO TV shows ever. But it happened. Really cool. And also, usually for the show, episode 2 is a bit underwhelming and slow. But this episode completely broke that rule. So great job. We also get to see a lot of passive-aggressive conversations. Cersei and Oberyn hated each other, but they still acted like they don't. So was Joffrey and Tyrion towards the end. When Joffrey wanted to humiliate Tyrion, Tyrion used clever ways. But what happens next is a big one. I'm giving a spoiler alert. At first it was fun to see Tyrion and Joffrey arguing. Then the tension started to build when Joffrey forced Tyrion to be his cup-bearer and kneel before him. But what I really like about Tyrion is that he didn't kneel. He stood still and was brave enough to refuse Joffrey's orders. And before Joffrey had Tyrion dead, Marjorie indirectly saved Tyrion. At that moment, my heart was pounding really fast and it was really intense. But it feels good to see the ultimate standoff between Tyrion and Joffrey before Joffrey was poisoned. I knew it was coming because everyone spoiled it. But it doesn't stop me from being surprised and shocked when Joffrey fell onto the ground, vomits, and there was blood coming out of his eyes and his nose. Joffrey was dead. I was the same time shocked, the same time delighted. Only a show like Game of Thrones can delight its audience when someone's poisoned to death. This might be the second best Game of Thrones episode I've ever watched so far. Moving on to episode 3, Breaker of Chains, full of entertaining moments. So after what happened last episode, Sansa managed to escape, but Tyrion was arrested. I really liked the moment when Tyrion had to say farewell to Podrick, and I really root for Tyrion. And how old was Maisie Williams when she's shooting this? 14? 15? Anyway, she yelled at the Hound for being a dick, and she's like, "You're such a shit!" I've been waiting for this moment for some time already. Arya swearing. I don't know why, but usually when kids swear, it's obnoxious, it's cringy, but when Arya swears, I'm totally cool with that. The scene where Daario had to fight the best champion of Meereen was pretty awesome. It's a cool scene. It's like the gun versus knife scene in Indiana Jones. Although I already saw that scene before, but it's still fun to watch, especially the scene where Dany threw barrels of broken chains to the walls of the city. Next is episode 4, Oathkeeper, which is full of scenes from King's Landing and north beyond the Wall. In King's Landing, Cersei still hated Tyrion and Sansa's guts, so Jaime gave his Valyrian steel sword to Brienne and told her to find Sansa. Pod also followed Brienne. I really love the scene where Marjorie broke into Tommen's chamber. Marjorie was soft, nice, and smart. And when she's speaking to Tommen, Tommen was like, Okay. Then in Castle Black and Craster's Keep, more characters from different plotlines meet each other. Janos Slynt, Janis Slynt, Locke, Bran, Jojen, Mira, Hodor, etc. And I also want to point out that Daenerys wanted to rule Westeros and achieve peace, but nailing slave masters onto wooden crosses is actually quite cruel. I'm looking forward to Tyrion's trial and how Jon Snow marched back to Craster's Keep. Then it's episode 5, First of His Name. We're halfway there. Although it's pretty slow and not as dramatic as previous episodes, there's still a couple of cool scenes with some main character deaths. I like to see how Brienne and Pod get along. I also like to see how Arya and the Hound getting along. But nothing too special happened. In King's Landing, Cersei was trying her best to make Tyrion look guilty, and the upcoming trial of Tyrion is something I really look forward to. And it's also pretty rough at the north when Jon Snow and his brothers went to Craster's Keep and cleaned things up. It was not as intense as I thought it would be, but it's interesting how things turned out at the end. And here we are at the second half of Season 4. Starting it off with a bang, this is Episode 6, The Laws of Gods and Men. First of all, we have great acting from this episode, from Alfie Allen, who played Theon Greyjoy, aka Reek, and Peter Dinklage, who played Tyrion Lannister, and how surprisingly loyal Theon is to Ramsay. Kinda shocked me, and I really hope Yara could rescue him successfully. We also get to see a couple of characters that wasn't mentioned often in the season. Davos and Stannis went to Braavos to take some money. The moment I saw Braavos in the opening scene, I'm excited. And the moment I saw Mark Gatiss in the show, I was really happy. I didn't see that coming. Mycroft Holmes in Game of Thrones? Cool. But the second half of the episode is really mind-blowing and heart-pounding. because it's Tyrion's trial, and it's not a fair trial at all. All the witnesses lied and there was manipulated by Cersei, who wants Tyrion dead. But Tyrion's speech at the end was really powerful, really angry, and I enjoyed a lot. This just made me like the character of Tyrion even more. Tyrion is the best character in the show so far. This is an excellent episode, so good it might be even better than The Lion and the Rose. Over to episode 7, Mockingbird. Maybe not as thrilling as the previous episode, but still, it's full of entertaining scenes and surprises. First, yep, Arya dropped the F-bomb. It's time to celebrate. Again, when I see kids swear, I cringe. But when I see Arya swear, I feel good. And then we also have a scene where the show proves us that Daenerys aren't just a strict and powerful ruler who killed the cruel and healed the kind. She also had a sexual desire for Daario, apparently, which contrasts a lot with season 1 when Khal Drogo forced her and she was powerless. But now she's powerful. Also, another character meets character from different plotline scene. I won't spoil it, but seeing these 2 or 3 characters meeting each other is fantastic. What are the odds? Alright guys, I'm back. The situation Tyrion was in had intensified. He demanded a trial by combat, and Cersei was trying her best to turn this situation into something unfair and biased. And I'm extremely happy with the fact that Oberyn and Tyrion became allies. And I really enjoy the final scene. I thought a person would die, but I wasn't sure. But then that person really died, so I was really proud of myself for predicting that, and I enjoyed it overall. Oh shit, it's episode 7, The Mountain and the Viper, which is probably the best episode of the season so far. First, we see how Ramsay used Theon to take down Moat Cailin, and Roose Bolton rewarded Ramsay because of this. We also have a sad turning point in Jorah's life, and he and Daenerys' relationship didn't work too well. And we also have more character change and development for Sansa. She's beginning to adapt to the world of lies and tricks. Oh, right, and spoilers. We also see how the wildlings attacked Molestown, and Ygritte was supposed to kill all people she found in the town. But when she sees Gilly, she spared her life. She still has a kind side, and I like Ygritte's character even more. Arya is so close to Sansa, but she failed to join Sansa. Like, Arya was closer to Robb and Catelyn last season, but she was unable to meet them again before they died. And what happened to Jorah is kinda sad. He was a spy, but he changed his mind and started actually serving Dany, or Daenerys. But still, everyone found out that he was a spy and hated him. And now he had to go away. I sympathize with Jorah. But the most important scene in this episode is the trial by combat. Prince Oberyn versus the Mountain. Of course I was rooting for Prince Oberyn, and he really did take down the Mountain. For a brief moment, until the Mountain gouged his eyes and crushed his skull. Really brutal scene, really sad scene too. I don't know how Tyrion will survive later on, but the show really showed us that you can't root for any characters at all. And of course, happy endings are hard to get. This is a great episode, and I believe none of the scenes in this episode is weighted. Every moment counts. Moving on to the second last episode of season 4, The Watchers on the Wall. And as you know, whenever the show hits the second last episode of a season, insane things happened. So, like Blackwater, this is another battle episode where a great battle takes place and takes up the entire hour. But instead of Stannis fighting Joffrey, we have the Wildlings fighting Night's Watch. This is a hell of an intense battle. Again, a lot of the scenes in this episode reminds me of the Battle of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings. The battle is full of layers and parts. That's why it keeps us on the edge of our seats from the beginning till the end. I get what the writers want this episode to be, which is to be the best episode of the season. But there are other episodes that surpass this one solely because of their shocking ending. However, I still think that this is an underrated episode. I really love it. So, here are some spoilers. It's a really intense battle. Given that the wildlings outnumbered the Night's Watch in 1,000 to 1. But still, we root for the Night's Watch. Janos Slynt is a coward. Alistair Thorne was a jerk. So it's all up to Jon Snow and his fellow friends, including Pip, Gren, and Ed, who died, unfortunately. Except Ed. I really loved the scene where Gren and the people beside him were holding the gates against a super strong giant, knowing they were going to die, but they still stood there and bravely cited the vow. I'm impressed by Gren's bravery. I also really liked the scene when they dropped the scythe and all the ice on the wall cracked and it destroyed all the climbing wildlings in one fell swoop. But the most unfortunate death is Ygritte's death. I really like her character. Her death is so avoidable and inevitable, but it still happened, all because of this Ollie kid. I'm unhappy with her death. Such a great episode with memorable deaths and stunning fights. Then, oh my gosh. At long last, we reached episode 10 of season 4, and after watching it, my feelings are almost indescribable. This is The Children, everybody. The best Game of Thrones season finale so far, even better than the season 2 finale, Valar Morghulis, and one of the best finales I've ever seen. Again, after I watched it, I got this post-traumatic Game of Thrones disorder, cause you just feel sad after watching it. Anyways, it's a game-changing, ultimate episode full of powerful moments that strikes you in the heart and makes your jaws drop and makes you wonder what will happen next, because the ending is just too insane to believe. I'm really glad this episode won an Emmy for outstanding writing. So I'm gonna give a spoiler alert again, because you'll regret it if the story is spoiled to you. Almost every single scene on this episode is very strong, solid, impactful, and shocking. Like the 2 previous episodes, none of the scenes were wasted. First, Jon Snow went to Mance Rayder because he wanted to kill Mance initially, and suddenly armies came and wiped out the entire camp of wildlings. And guess what? It's Stannis, Davos, and Melisandre meets Jon Snow. This is brilliant, and when Jon Snow is burning Ygritte's body alone, that's emotional. Further to the north, Bran, Hodor, Mira, and Jojen reached the magical Weirwood Tree, and skeletons rose from the ground and attacked them, and that scene tells me that the show has completely gone into the world of magic. Jojen died, sadly, and the three-eyed raven showed up in human form, like a lot of ancient Chinese tales. The three-eyed raven can see everything and change to many forms. And the show has gone to a very extreme and mystic point. Even more shocking when Brienne and Podrick stumble upon Arya and the Hound on the way to the Eyrie. Another great character meets character scene. And there's a memorable scene where Brienne nearly killed the Hound. But I doubt that he's actually dead, because I think he's still alive. What's most painfully shocking, however, is Jaime helping Tyrion escape. Then Tyrion managed to kill both Shae and Tywin Lannister before he escaped with Varys. But the most powerful moment in this episode is Arya, being alone, irrationally made a decision. Instead of going north, she went to Braavos. And with Varys, Tyrion, and Arya leaving Westeros, the game has changed. Literally. It's Game of Thrones, and it has changed. I told myself after I watched the Season 2 finale, no way can the story be more insane and adventurous. But I was wrong. This season finale is an ultimate, an epic finale that will always stay in my mind, forever. Overall, this season is the best season of the show so far, and definitely one of the best TV seasons ever produced. The second episode broke the tradition and left the world in shock, and the second half of the show is nearly flawless, extremely dramatic, entertaining and powerful scenes back to back to back. And at this point, I'm not sure if the producers of this show is capable of making a boring episode again. It's been a rough season for the Night's Watch, for King's Landing, a lot of brutal and gruesome death in the main characters. And because the show didn't introduce more character this season, so there are a lot of character meets character scenes, which are brilliant. And I like how at the ending of every episode in the season, there will be a big scene where a cliffhanger takes place or someone dies. Such a powerful season, such an entertaining season. It sets a standard for a lot of TV shows today, and it tops the chart and brings out some of the most insanely good storylines ever. The worst is episode 5, first of its name, and the best is... Originally, I was gonna give it to episode 8, but I changed my mind. It's episode 10, The Children. I'm saying Game of Thrones Season 2 is definitely mind-blowing, and I'm giving it a solid 10 out of 10. It's true, it's genuine. 10 out of 10, perfect score. So, have you watched Game of Thrones Season 4? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like and subscribe if you want more.